Welcome back, soldiers. How's it going? And guys, it's such a pleasure to do these videos with you and to continue to figure it out what Final Fantasy VII Remake is all about. We know that time and everything around that is really important on this sequel of Final Fantasy Advent Children. Yes, that's what we think. We think this is no more, no less than a sequel of Final Fantasy Advent Children, the movie. And it all makes sense, you know, got brand new Sephiroth, we got a few things. Guys, these videos takes a bit to do, and of course to record all of the things, the voices and stuff. So, if you like these kinds of videos, I urge you to, if you want, like and subscribe to our brand new channel. Our objective for now it's reached 100 subs. So with your help we know that we can do it. Guys, Final Fantasy VII Remake is an amazing story. They did very well all of the things in this game. One of the things that we love is the way that they tell the story in this timeline. And of course, being this a different timeline, something that is really different from the OG, or, well, with some nuances that are different from the OG, this is pretty cool to continue to watch everything that is happening on Final Fantasy VII Remake. This chapter 12, for us, is just an attack on Sector 7. But, chapter 12, our theory, is where it all begins. The collapse, fate, and the fracture of time starts here. This is where everything changes. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving deep into Chapter 12 of Final Fantasy VII Remake. As we mentioned, titled Fight for Survival. But let me tell you, this chapter isn't just about this battle. It's not about the battle for the Sector 7 pillar. It's about loss. It's about fate, it's about rebellion, and it's the chapter that truly breaks the old timeline wide open. If you thought things were strange before, this is where the threads start unrevealing. This is where it all begins. Let's talk about inevitably from the start of this chapter. We know the Sector 7 plate is coming down. That's not a spoiler, it's history. It's something that we know that happened on Final Fantasy VII OG, that is going to happen on this remake as well. But here's what makes this so compelling in the remake.
Come on.
Our heroes fight like they can't stop it. Well, and you're going to say, hey, listen, they did the same on Final Fantasy VII OG. That's exactly the same thing. So, what is different right now? Well, they climbed the pillar, they fended off waves of Shinra troops, and they pushed themselves beyond their limits to save what, according to fate, was already lost.
That's Barret.
But the question here is, will they be succeeding on this thing? They will not succeed. Once again, we know that the story needs to be like this. There's a tension here that didn't exist in the original game. In the OG Final Fantasy VII, the plate drop is almost clinical. It happens fast. You don't see much of a fight, but in the remake, this is a war zone. No, you see Jinro soldiers, you see the Turks. Well, the big spoiler, Wedge right here is alive. By this time on the OG, Wedge is already, yes, dead.
Wedge, listen to me. You stay here with them.
This makes a big difference in this chapter. The struggle to prevent the fall is real, and that raises a key question. Is this fight doomed? Or are we watching the timeline start to splinter? A growing theory is that the events on the remake are happening on a timeline that's already begun diverging. Maybe even from the moment Claude and Aerith met in Chapter 2. This isn't a strict remake. It's a remake with memory, with a different set of things, with a different story. So, Wedge survived, we saw that. Right there, it's a whole different thing from the OG Final Fantasy set. It's really a big difference, and it's so important. And we see that not only Shinra is, sending more troops, they are fighting more harder than ever. Even Avalanche is doing their part. All Avalanche is doing their part. The Neighborhood Watch is doing their part. And we see a bunch of Jinro soldiers already there. That shows us that once again there's a different timeline right here. A fractured one, if you want to call it like that. Another point that is very interesting in this Final Fantasy VII Remake, especially in this Chapter 12, is the fact that the Whispers here, they go, hard, they go wild, because they are, fate in itself, they are losing control of the timeline. They are losing the specific points on the timeline that should happen in that specific order, in that specific way. So we see the Whispers going wild. You've seen the Whispers before. Those ghost-like entities enforcing destiny. But in Chapter 12, they go absolutely berserk. And we can see this. Here they are again with Biggs. And you see they are delaying Cloud on purpose to allow Biggs to, not recover maybe? Well, we don't know about that, but it seems like this way. Now, they swarming Avalanche, interfering with fights, and ultimately doing nothing to stop the plate from falling. No, they shouldn't. The plate is supposed to fall. That needs to happen in the real timeline, in the timeline that we all know. That needs to happen in everything that we see on this game. The Whispers are always trying to continue the timeline. But what can we see in this chapter specifically? They are going harder than ever. They are trying their hardest to preserve the timeline. Well, we can see Barrett and Wedge and even Biggs. In this chapter, they will, confront the Whispers and interact with them in a big way, in a way that we don't see them interact so far in this remake. And of course, during this chapter, we know that Aerith knows way more than he's supposed to. Even this interaction with Biggs and Cloud is way different from the original. Well, this leads us to a big idea. Maybe fate isn't about individuals, it's about events. Because we see Wedge surviving, Biggs right here, like the OG seems to be, dead. Jessie, you'll see in the rest of this video that she dies there. At least that's what we think. The Whispers don't save Wedge. They don't rescue the innocent. They let the plate fall, because the fall itself is what's important. So, when someone like Wedge survives a moment they weren't supposed to, the Whispers corrected it. And we see that correction in this chapter in an horrifying way. Spoiler alert, will not be in this chapter here. Not exactly on this, but we will link it to this video so you guys can see. But it does fall, it does survive, and he is rescued. What we're trying to say is the Whispers on the OG Final Fantasy VII, they do not interfere with anything. They let Wedge fall from a third store or fourth store and he dies. Period. In here, nope, that's not what it happens. He's still alive. We don't know if Biggs is still alive or Jessie. We will know actually Biggs. And this is not a spoiler. By now it's been 5 years, so Biggs we also know that survived. So yet another change. But specific in this chapter, the theory is that once again this is where it all begins. This is where the timeline splits completely from the OG Final Fantasy VII. And that's where we're gonna focus. What survived? And it says that I've been talking with some of the Final Fantasy VII OG players and players that know the lore and all of that. Wedge survival is one of the biggest shockers when they start this chapter. Why? Because what are we expecting to happen in this chapter as a Final Fantasy VII player? Okay, Wedge falls, he's the first to die. Then we see Biggs, he dies next. And then we see Jessie. And then the plate falls. We fight, the plate falls, they are dead. The three of them is just over. That's not what happens here. So Wedge survival being a shocker, it continues to surprise us during the next chapters. He fights alongside the team, he saves Cat, he gives hope. But in the end, the Whispers literally drag him into the shadows.
Screw this cheap ass.
Okay, so we didn't arrive yet to that chapter. Once again, I will link it here for you guys to see it. But in later chapters, you will see that happening. And once again, we see Edge being saved by Tifa and Aerith. And he's okay. Well, kind of. He did fail. But he is okay. Most of the things that we're seeing here, you know, Wedge Pet Shop, you know, the plates start to fall. Tifa running behind Cloud to help. This is all what the fate needs to happen. The Harbinger of Fate needs that everything happen like this. In truth, it doesn't matter if Wedge, Biggs or Jessie actually survived. What matters is that the plate must fall. The rest can be corrected.
Now get up there and kick Shinra's ass.
This is the first explicit instance of the Whispers eliminating a character who will diverge too far from their destined death. It's not just poetic, it's, you know, chilling. it's crazy. And when you see that happen, if I'm not mistaken, is in chapter 15 or 16. I think it's on the 15, but once again, we will plug this here. It's just, you think,
I'm no good. Not to anyone up there.
he survived the biggest. He survived on the biggest
That's not true, Wedge.
diverge part of this timeline, which is the fall of Sector 7.
You don't think we're gonna stop them from...
And now they just, you know, take him to Oblivion, take him to the darkness,
Win somehow.
like we see in the chapter. It makes no sense. And also because in
Do for a record.
the last part of the game, spoilers alert,
You know what I mean?
we'll see Biggs as well, alive.
I do. But that's not
So one of the other theories that we have for this chapter here is
I need to know I did everything I could.
this timeline this timeline actually
I'm not sure what's gonna happen next.
is
But
self
I am sure
Healing.
I don't want to regret the choices I make tonight.
if you push too far away from what is supposed to happen,
Don't open up, we're all gonna...
sometimes someone or something will come to push you back. And that's exactly what happened in this chapter. All the disturbance in this chapter, everything that happens differently in this timeline,
Seventh Heaven is just down this road, isn't
it
it?
needs to be corrected.
Don't worry about me.
And it will be corrected later on, or not.
Out of Sector 7, please. We need to get as far away from Sector 7 as possible.
Okay.
Right now. Go to Sector 5.
So this part on Wedge
You
is very
want me to get
normal.
out of Sector
But
7.
how about Aerith? Aerith once again shows in this chapter that she knows
Well, there's still
way more than you should.
But yes.
A strong theory, you know,
Those sons of bitches.
on this
They think that'll do.
is that Aerith is not just a Cetra. Bear with me,
Wait, the watch should clear the road
we'll get
first.
there.
Good thinking. Up to it.
Watch her closely in this chapter. The urgency in her voice, the way she takes the lead, and most importantly, the sadness in her eyes. She knows. She knows what's coming. And of course, we also know what's coming. And that is not going to change on this game.
To get to Seventh Heaven. That's it. Oh God! Look out!
So, Aerith is not just a Cetra or F Cetra.
No!
We know that. We know that in most of the chapters on Final Fantasy VII Remake, She knows more than she is supposed to know. Now, she knows that Marlene exists. She knows that she needs to save Marlene. She knows that the Sector 7 plate is gonna fall. And a strange part is Aerith, in the first game, in Final Fantasy VII OG, she doesn't take the lead in anything, or almost anything.
There's a way out over there.
Gotta get through.
Especially Midgar.
Wait.
She just, I would not say stand there, but we already know this is a different Aerith, or at least is an Aerith that is, you know, her knowledge about the timelines, it's bigger than it's supposed to be.
Oh, you poor thing.
So, the sadness, because she knows what's coming. The way she takes the lead to save people, to go to Marlene, to, you know, the confidence that she has later on in this chapter. You will see her, you know, talking with Sang. And it's insane because you think, oh,
Almost there, okay?
this is not normal.
None of this makes any sense.
She actually knows what's happening, or else she wouldn't talk like that. Well,
Steady now.
it would make sense.
Thank God.
She's time
Come on, Nick,
aware.
it's fine. Don't worry about me.
She
We need to get us
is time aware. She knows the timelines. She understands the timelines. She knows, and maybe she's trying to do her best not to interfere too much in that timeline. Working alongside
Can you take care of her? Of course.
the Whispers.
I've been looking everywhere for you.
Because if we think about, especially after Advent Children, we know that Aerith, Zack are in the live stream. Sephiroth is somehow in the live stream still,
To get through.
but asleep.
Almost there. There's still.
And we know that in this Final Fantasy VII Remake, Sephiroth is trying to take back Destiny. Taking back everything, to change everything in order not to die. Because if he changes things around, maybe he can change enough not to die, or at least that the future outcome would be way different. So, whether it's from the live stream or alternate timelines, she may retain memories or emotions from events that haven't happened yet, or have happened before in a different interaction or in a different timeline. For example, when Aerith here checks on Marlene, of course, Marlene is scared, she's a child, she's alone, which Barrett, come on, leaving a 6 or 7 years old in charge of a bar, it's just crazy. She's such a small kiddo.
A friend of Tifa's.
Then we see Aerith, all cute, talking with Marlene.
Now, she's with Cloud and the others.
And of course, Marlene is scared,
Daddy too?
and
Barrett?
she doesn't know Aerith,
He's there too.
and she's,
Daddy's not from home?
from the start, Marlene
Not yet.
doesn't trust that much on Aerith.
Tifa asked me to.
And, well, that's good, you know. But then, see the reaction. Aerith is calm.
Okay?
Marlene is like, I don't know. But look now.
Gonna destroy the bar?
This is a very, very important part of this chapter. Aerith opens her arms hug her and say something
I know it's hard.
to her.
Just
And
remember,
it's not,
you still have your
I know it's hard, or
time to
this
hold together.
sentence that she's saying right now.
Shall
When
we
she
go?
sees that Marlene still doesn't believe on her, and she starts crying, which is normal, it's a kid. She's scared. But this right here is when Aerith says something to her that makes her change her mind immediately. Well, that explains her behavior. Decisive, but deeply empathetic. She's not just trying to save lives. She's trying to rewrite this tragedy
Oh?
in a way that is not, so big as the Final Fantasy VII OG. Because we know that one, Biggs, Wedge, Jesse doesn't survive. Marlene does survive. But there's a lot of
I hope you
people, way more people than die. Especially, we see Aerith very confident in this chapter, which is, very fun to see because she's usually on Final Fantasy VII OG, she's not confident at all. If you know the game, if you played the game, you know that she is not confident at all. Right here, when we see Tseng again,
Led us on a merry chase.
look to Aerith expression.
Sung.
Of course, we all know that she doesn't fear Tseng. They know each other for a long time. Of course, she's protecting Marlene.
Before you say another word, know that your options are
This is beautiful. Before you say another word, there you go. She will do
Nothing
anything
to be scared of, okay?
to protect Marlene. Especially because it's
How about
the way it should be.
deal?
How about we make a deal? And Tseng is for me one of the awesome character in this game. I always loved Tseng, but in Final Fantasy VII Remake they gave him something else. There's a feeling, there's something else about Tseng. So what we know is she's trying to rewrite this tragedy and trying to protect his friends and change destiny in itself. This part, however, in this chapter 12, all this is to, blame it on Avalanche and Utai, and to allow Chira to use
Nice catch.
other forms of control,
So suck it up.
You know.
I'm not leaving.
more violent forms of control probably. At least psychological violence, it will be something that they will do to control Midgar. So the destruction of the plate isn't just a plot point, it's a symbolism on a massive scale. Now, what's the point to drop a plate on the slums? Like Reeve says, you are killing millions to catch 5. Makes no sense. Now, Midgar is a city literally built on control. The plates represent hierarchy, rich on top, poor below. The fall of the plate is the collapse of that illusion. We see that it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, the true
What was
power in Midgar is Shinra. Oh, and once again,
How'd you guys rate my latest
we see
review?
Shinra doing this struggle with Midgar. And always coming on top. There's no way
Today's
that
your
Shinra
lucky day, 'cause I
loses Midgar like that. Jesse right here, you know, should... Well, something tells me that Jesse right here in this segment
let's do this.
should have survived. And I'm saying that because the way that the Whispers interact with her was very strange. The fall of the plate, this is Shinra losing control, not just over the people, but over destiny itself. You know, in the earlier chapters, I always told you that Shinra knew more about this timeline, or timelines, that we actually said and saw on the first game.
Jesse!
And maybe that's why the Whispers allow this to happen. Because some things need to break to allow the bigger story to move forward. The Whispers could, you know, stop all this. They didn't. Because the main, once again, the main job of the Whispers is maintain the timeline. This also sets the tone for everything that comes after. From here on out, nothing is guaranteed, not even the past.
Lucky me.
And once again,
It's okay, Clark.
we can immediately jump to Wedge, Biggs, and Jesse. The theory about Jesse Biggs and Jesse and Biggs, sorry, is that they are echoes of the past.
Just try to hang on.
Their deaths or survival are full of emotional weight, but also heavy implications. Jesse's final moments are heartbreaking, but they follow the expected pattern. It's normal. This happened in Final Fantasy VII OG.
Mom's cooking.
Not the dialogue. The dialogue is a lot of, you know, more extensive,
We could.
You owe me a pizza.
but
That's right.
she needs
I do.
to be on that platform alongside with Biggs as well. And if you think about it, the only one that actually do not stay on the platform, even if he dies on the first game, is Wedge. So Jesse and Biggs, they need to be there. They're the echoes of the past.
Don't you guys have somewhere to be? It's not polite.
And they follow that pattern. So that's the main theory on this, is those two are something to remember the timeline from the past. It's a link, you know, to not let the timeline split once again. And we see that when Biggs was lying down, the Whispers were there. A Whisper went to Cloud. And we saw when Jesse was facing the helicopter, Jesse touched a Whisper as well. So we saw the Whispers there in two different occasions in order to maintain the timeline fixed. the timeline could not move from the expectations. And the expectation in that case was Jesse and Biggs being in the platform and dying there. But then Biggs, that final shot, the final shot in the game that I was mentioning earlier before, is alive. It's in the orphanage. It's alive. Somewhere safe. And that tells us this someone is changing things. There's a change on there. Because in the end of the game, what do we see? We see that Claude and the party disrupt destiny. And Biggs is already saved, is already alive before the disruption of the timeline. Maybe the Whispers failed in his. Maybe someone saved him in secret. Maybe the timeline cracked open just enough for Biggs to survive. And maybe even Wedge to survive, we don't know.
Sorry, losers. Gotta play for keeps today. No time to dick around.
We don't know. We know by the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake, Biggs is alive. That's what we know.
Plate separation authorized. Awaiting confirmation.
So,
Plate
that
separation
once again begs a few questions. If Biggs is alive, does someone else have to die?
plate separation
Is the timeline zero sum? Are we playing Fate's game without knowing the rules? So, what this means is, did Biggs knew something about it? Did he actually knew that for one reason or another, if he kept if he was kept on the platform, if he actually stayed behind, someone would save him? Well, I think it's a big stretch, but I was talking with someone that played Final Fantasy VII Remake recently, and he said that the fact that Wedge is taken by the Whispers, Jesse, as it seems, is dead. And then we see Biggs alive in the orphanage. There's a different shape of reality in this timeline. And maybe someone else needs to give his life for Biggs. And this was the theory of the timeline being zero sum. But if those three were supposed to die, and Wedge gave his life for Biggs, who's gonna give his life in order to Biggs continuing the storyline? We don't know much more about Biggs in the rest of Final Fantasy VII Remake. But we know this is where all begins. The theory about the shape of reality and the timeline being fractured starts exactly on this chapter. We saw the hints during chapter 1 to 11. But this here it marks the starting point. We're talking about 4 chapters or 5 before the end of the game that shows that this timeline is split already. It's not the same timeline that we were thinking. It's not the same timeline that the OG Final Fantasy VII goes with. And that begs the question. Did the Whispers of Fate actually failed their mission? Did Sephiroth accomplish to change destiny? Is Avalanche wrong now in the wrong part of history? Is Cloud, Tifa, Barret, Red, 13, and Aerith on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth reconnect with the timeline? Well, of course, we got several videos to go. We still have this and another 4 chapters to go, plus intermission with Yuffie to explain everything that we know, every theory that we think, chapter by chapter. The theory on this video is where it all begins. And I have no doubt that the game itself shows us here on this chapter, this is the point fracture of the timeline. And this is the big theory for this chapter is fracture mode started here. Started on Sector 7, where all starts either way in order to defy destiny once again. Chapter 12 is the first major break from destiny, especially character-wise, because we know that Wedge survive and we know that Biggs survive. The moment where the old story ends and something new, dangerous, and unpredictable begins. Even the climb for the Chira building is different. The way you acquire, it's different. The way you unlock it. You'll need some grappling guns, dude. You didn't. That's true. That's what it is. You did not need to have grappling guns to get to the Chira building. And we'll see in the future, in a few weeks, the chapter in itself on our way to the Chira building. Fate is now a character in this story. Aggressive and scared. And our heroes, they're not just fighting Chira anymore. They're fighting the shape of reality itself. Because Chira will use anything and everything to achieve his purpose, to go to the promised land. And they don't care who gets hurt or not. In this case, it was a poor decision. But in other cases that we're going to see further, you will see that they did the right thing to get to the promised land. Well, will they succeed in doing that? We don't know. But we will have a few chapters still on Final Fantasy VII Remake, and we can discover that. And we can see what happened.
Aerith!
Marlene! My Marlene! What did you do with her?
This is where it all begins. This is the split of this timeline. This is where things change. Hopefully, in the next episode of chapter 13, which is where it all begins, part 2 for me, you will see that all things related to Sector 7 plate is about destiny. And is about connecting the 5 of the main characters. Or at least the 5 that don't die. Wedge excluded, of course. So guys, I hope you did enjoy the video. I appreciate you all in all. I do appreciate all the support and love that you've been giving to these videos. Says, you know, our theories and playing the video game, because that's what we're doing. We're playing the video game and giving you a few theories. And expand other theories, continue other theories, learn new theories as well. And also making up theories. That's the beautiful part of this series. Chapter 12 in the fall of the Sector 7 plate was needed for Destiny. It was needed for the story, and it was needed for our heroes. And you can see once again Wedge saving cats. Now, does he die here? This chapter was really needed to put in our characters that deep emotional thing. So guys, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll hope to see you in the next video. If you have theories, comment. If not, just leave your like. Thank you so much. Until the next video. Bye bye guys.